This is CW Iowa Live.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to CW Iowa Live here on Channel 23. I'm here with Sheree Clark from Fork in the Road, who is here to talk about a very important subject matter, addiction. And that could be anywhere from obviously enjoying a friendly drink with a companion, maybe indulging in some chocolate. So far, so good. I'm loving everything we're saying here. But even going to the gym, that can be something that people are addicted to. And that's kind of what's in front of me is a tray of addictions that we can have. And if we're starting out the new year in a better way for ourselves and our environment, it's important to, I guess, recognize those addictions and realize there might be some other options out there for you as well. So good morning, Sheree. Thank you for joining me in studio today. So let's talk through it. Let's talk through addictions.
Yeah, well, let's start with what, like you were saying, what we can get addicted to, because ordinarily we'll think of the normal things, you know, caffeine, alcohol, sugar, those are things that people come to mind immediately. But let's look at some of the other things that I brought along today to represent some addictions.
Okay.
Playing cards, gambling is obviously a big one. 1-800-BETS-OFF. We've seen the billboards and things for that. In the tennis show itself represents exercise. Believe it or not,
you can get addicted to that.
You can absolutely get addicted to that, and I bet there are people listening who, if they aren't themselves addicted to exercise, know someone who is. Any kind of behavior that becomes compulsive can ultimately be addictive. And then on the far right is the one that we all know, the telephone.
Oh yeah, right here. Let me pull it out here. Yeah, I think we can all admit that we are probably on that guy a little bit more than we need to. But what takes it into the realm of addiction? I'll fully admit it. I do drink caffeine. I try not to rely on it, but every once in a while you need that extra kick in the morning. I love chocolate, love a great bottle of wine. I'm on my phone for work, pleasure. Well, I don't really go to the gym, but you know, these are things that I feel like aren't necessarily bad for me in my life to enjoy. But so when does it cross over into that place where we need to step back a little bit?
That's a great question, and the first indication that there may be an issue is even asking that question. When you have to start asking, geez, I wonder if I've carried this a little bit too far. That's an indication. It's not conclusive evidence, but it's an indication that maybe you should be looking at things. So what are some other examples? One might be if the behavior or the substance is something that you can't imagine going an entire day without. If you can't imagine starting and getting through an entire day without the coffee, without gambling, without exercising, without being on the phone. If someone says to you, I'd like to challenge you to go 24 hours without texting, and you think, I don't think I can do that, there's an indication.
Okay.
If doing it is starting to cost you something, it might be costing inordinate amounts of money. The gambling is a great example of that. It could also be costing you relationships. If you're sitting at the dinner table and your spouse is like, could you please get off the phone?
Right.
If it's costing you work time because you can't make it to work on time because you're drinking alcohol the night before and then you're hungover the next morning. And so it's those kinds of things. It's when it creeps outside this is fun, this is enjoyment, into slopping over and affecting the other parts of your life that it really doesn't belong in.
And that's when the warning signal should be going off. And I love that you're talking about a realm of different things here, because a lot of times when you think addiction, you think of substances that we might abuse. But it really can be something as simple as sugar or your phone or other activities that we like to get involved with. So it's nice to hear there's other things we need to kind of pay attention to in our lives. Because I think if you said something, you can get addicted going to the gym, you know, they're like, what? No, I'm taking care of myself. I'm making myself healthier. But you can cross over into that point of no return as well.
What causes the crossover in some cases, and sometimes you'll get an indication because, again, one of your friends, relatives, loved ones will call it to your attention and say, you go to the gym when we should be doing something else. Many times what an addiction is it's the avoidance of something else. So the exercise one, you know, it's normal. I thought the same thing. I was like, well, how can an exercise addiction be a bad thing? It would just mean that you're incredibly fit.
Right.
But people with exercise addictions may be avoiding social interactions with others, or they could be feeding another addiction, which is the desire to be thin. So so anorexia, for example, might be supported by over-exercise. So it doesn't just have to be things that we ingest or do too much. It could be that the reason for the behavior is to avoid something else, to get away from something. Substance abuse, for example, what we're getting away from, we're numbing out to the pain of daily life. So you go to work with a buzz means that you're really avoiding what it is that's causing you the pain.
Okay, so let's look at the alternative and some other practices that you have. Since I have all the addictions or possibility of addictions, I shouldn't say none of these are necessarily bad, but they can be taken too far.
They can absolutely be taken too far. So
what's on your tray then?
So there's a realm of things, and my suggestion is that there's no one golden hammer that's going to solve all of the problems. Typically, the first step is going to be identification that there may be an issue here. There may be something that I need to take a look at, that I need to explore. I have to be open-minded to it. And from that point, then we can go forward. So in some cases, it might be that we're not addicted, we're just maybe carrying it to the extreme, and it's not too late, and we can reel back on that. So you know that one time I came on the program, and I had a wine glass, and I indicated that this helps us to decide portions. So for example, we talk about moderation, but moderation is a subjective animal. So what is moderation? How much is a serving? If we start measuring, if we start tracking, maybe start logging, have a journal and write down how many times a day or that type of thing. It'll do two things. One, it will help you discern how far am I actually going, and two, might put some parameters, some guardrails, bumper rails on your behaviors. So that's one thing. That's not a solution if you have a legitimate addiction. Moderation, if you're a true addict, probably isn't the right strategy. But what some strategies, and probably the most important and effective strategy, if we're talking about alcohol, one that people are familiar with would be a 12-step program. So this is the Alcoholics Anonymous book, or the Blue Book. So there might be other support groups. If Alcoholics Anonymous isn't necessarily your jam, there are other groups, other support places, other support mechanisms in place. One of them might be one-on-one. It could be going to see a therapist. It could be those kinds of things. So finding other people to support what it is you're trying to do is a really beneficial. Peer support is very, very valuable. Other things, I enjoy supplements. I enjoy going to the health food store and getting things that I think will be beneficial. But once again, this is not a panacea. Taking a pill and not changing your behavior is not going to do anything whatsoever for the problem. So starting here on my far right, kudzu is an example of a supplement that's available that helps with sugar cravings. And because alcohol is a sugar, this can be beneficial with helping with that. It won't do the job if you don't address the other issues. So I would suggest that in addition to potentially going to meetings, seeing a therapist. People, again, I'm talking about alcohol because it's a common one, and it's one that we're familiar with, and it's that time of year. A lot of people have decided to dry out, if you will. B-complex is something that when you drink a lot of alcohol, your body is depleted of. And so and it helps with the stress response. So it would be helpful to supplement with that. In the case of kudzu, we're managing cravings. In the case of B-complex, we're supplementing. And then finally, we can do something like take a mood and patience supplement, because let's face it, anytime we're trying to get away from an addiction or change a behavior, there's a tendency for us to feel a little bit short. I know it happens to me. I've gone off of coffee, I've gone back on it, and when you're without it, you get a little owly. You kind of got the brain buzz there, the brain fog, and you're like, I'm cranky. I need to do something about this. So those are the kinds of things. I would suggest asking other people, what do you do? Somebody that's been down the path before you, somebody that's been down that road. What supplements did you take? What did you do that was helpful? And here's the other thing. If you try something and it doesn't work, knock on another door. If you go to an AA meeting, don't write off AA if you didn't like the meeting, or if for some reason it was inconvenient, or whatever, something happened to trigger you. There's plenty of other meetings within the city. If you're not the person with the addiction issue, there are groups to support you. Al-Anon is another group, and I'm not pushing AA or Al-Anon. I'm using them as examples because they're really well known. So there are plenty of there's Narcotics Anonymous, there's Overeaters Anonymous, there's all kinds of support for any kind of issue that you might have. And the big thing is, the first thing is to recognize that you've got a problem.
look inward as we're heading into the new year and see if there's something in your life you might need to change, and realize that there is assistance, there is help, and we appreciate you bringing up a very important topic with us this morning. If people have more questions, maybe ways that you can lead them in a direction, as you said, you're not here to solve the world's problems or anything like that, but maybe you can give some guidance to some people listening out there this morning. How can they get in touch with you, Sheree?
Well, you can shoot me an email at info@fork-road.com, or check my website, www.fork-road.com, and I would love to hear what it is I can help you with, or if you've got ideas for the segment, throw those my way too.
Yeah, we're always looking for great new ideas this morning, but more importantly, just starting your day, your week, your life in the new year in a healthier way, which you always do for us, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you, Sheree. You're watching CW Iowa Live. More